Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm talking with Kosmos, and we're going to talk about maybe the DLC and some other things to do with Elden Ring, and we'll just see where the conversation goes. So I'm really excited about this, and welcome, Kosmos.
Thank you for having me, and hello everyone. I hope you're all doing well.
So I think I discovered you. There was a conversation you had with Ray Jakari, and I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that conversation. That was really fun to listen to. And you actually, you guys talked about Radigan and how his personality sort of exemplified the Crucible aspects of the Crucible. And I thought, oh, this is such an interesting take. So then after that conversation, I looked up your channel. I watched all your videos, and I was really pleased with them because I've found, there's so many people making lore content for Elden Ring now, but you were offering these totally unique theories that I hadn't seen anywhere else. I think you maybe have the only video about Ensha that I've seen. It was really
Yeah.
interesting. So yeah, I'm really pleased to see something a little different. So I really enjoyed that. So
You
and
know,
then
I'm
yeah, sorry.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm really surprised every single day when people say they enjoy those videos. I thought people would really find them way too unhinged.
Well, I think it's all a process, right? So like we're all trying to figure out this mysterious story, and in that
For sure.
process, some people are going to go down the route of like, let's explore this one sort of more mainstream idea in further and further detail, and then other people are going to go and all right, let's really go out there and see if we can try coming up with something new. And I think that's what you do a little bit, and I really like that. So
Yeah. I'm certainly not interested in just rereading to people the item descriptions. So
right,
if
right, yeah,
if I wanna really go out there and if I see some semblance, uh, perhaps it's pure like um, just delusion from me what I see in the lore. But if I see some sort of story being told that's not explicitly told in the items, I want to share it and try to get it out there. Even if it's end up being completely wrong, it's just something. If it's something interesting and fun to ponder, then it's really something I want to get into.
yeah. And I mean, not to harp on this topic, but I mean, I really do appreciate that because often, even if I disagree with something, when I see someone present a totally unique idea, then that gets me thinking about like, oh, you really thought that this was important. Let me look at that in more detail and think about this and how that might make sense. So I think it helps spur the conversation onwards, and I appreciate that. So
For sure.
um, so we've got a DLC announcement in classic FromSoft fashion without any fanfare. We
Mhm.
just got a title and a picture, and oh, most importantly, I should mention that you made a video with some predictions for the DLC, um,
Yeah.
and I've seen you post on Twitter occasionally about looking forward to a Helfin DLC, and that was actually the very first video that I did was on the Helfin, so we're sort of
Yeah.
on the same page about that. So I don't know. Do you have any? Um, well, first I should say you're working on a video about the DLC.
Oh
So
yeah.
when that comes up, I encourage everyone to, well, first of all, subscribe to Cosmos and check out that video when it comes out. But do you have any like first reactions or thoughts about the picture and where we might be going with all this?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's happening. We go in there. We go into the Helfen. That's my reaction to the picture. I um I generally think that the one of the predictions I had in that video, which was more of a wishful thinking, really, more than a prediction, was that the DLC would be about Miquella, but it wouldn't just be about Miquella, but rather the Health and Spirit World DLC would also be packaged with Miquella, and we get there through Miquella. And I think with just the image that we got from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC reveal, I think there is some things there that really kind of made me almost convinced that that is all like actually happening, you know.
What anything in specifically, or I mean, there's like these ghostly tombstones and things. So in terms of spirits, that kind of makes sense to me. Um,
Hmm. Well,
wh-
there is Mikela there, first of all.
right.
And there is Mikela there, and then there is this well, I guess the most obvious and on your face information, or rather like kind of lore revelation we get from that teaser image, is that the possibility of Mikela being actually Torrent's former master is much more likely now, thanks to that picture. It's not like it's confirmed, of course, but just having that connection reinforced with that picture strengthen the ties that Mikela has with spirits, considering that we get from him also the spirit calling bell and the tree wolf ashes, as well as just having Mikela there in that landscape, just the overall art direction of the landscape with the ghostly graves, the gravestones, as well as the ruins that we can find on the landscape are kind of, I think, and that's where we get into like really tinfoil crackpot theories, but I think they are kind of telling, and they hold some sort of connection to the spirit world.
So let me just pick up one thing there, because I think some people have been speculating whether that is Mikola or not, and I suppose it is possible it's someone else. It's possible it's America or something like that. But if you look at the hairstyle, there's a specific sort of circlet braid with these
Mm-hmm.
very large braids, which is exactly how Mikola is depicted in the concept art in the opening intro of the game. So my feeling is it is almost certainly Mikola, although it is possible that Mikola, young America or something like that. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are possible, but I think the most likely is that it's Mikola. And then,
Definitely, and I would like to like talk about how, I don't know if you were here, like pre-release of the game back in like in the Great Halloween when we were waiting for the game.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah, so we had this like 2019 trailer, right, which had like Marika and Radagon shattering the Elden Ring, which at the time we didn't know what it actually was. We just had this blacksmith figure who was switching genders and hammering the ring, which we assumed was shattering it. And at some point, they revealed the existence of Godwin, and Godwin looked exactly the same as Radagon did in that old 2019 cinematic.
yes,
And the the character of Radagon did not exist until we got our hand on the game. Like there was no reference to him whatsoever pre-release. So for the longest time, we actually thought that that person was possibly Godwin because it almost looked exactly like him. So it might be there is a chance that it's that again, a similar situation, but otherwise it's probably just Mikela, really.
yeah. I wonder about that. With what I guess there's two things to pick up on there. One is, you know, the story of these games, they can change quite dramatically during development.
Mhm.
And we definitely see that with Mikola and St. Trina, that, there was a lot of stuff that was cut there. And, like, I don't know for sure if in the retail version of the game, if Mikola is St. Trina, because it seems to be very heavily implied that that's the case, or explicitly stated that that's the case in cut stuff. But then, well, maybe in development you cut a bunch of stuff and now you start to change this and the story takes a different turn. With the Godwin thing, I would say one thing about that is, so in the trailer, in that first trailer, the character who is presumably Radigan now, it's a little bit difficult to tell because of the lighting, but it looks like he has blonde hair. And
Yeah.
then there's actually, in the art book, there is one piece of art which shows a man hammering the Elden Ring, and he's got
Mhm.
blonde hair. And so I was like, okay, well that's a little weird. And then also um, the thing on his back, this sort of, it looks a lot like Godwin's curse mark. So there's some weird similarity
Yeah.
there where maybe Radigan didn't always exist, or maybe he existed as a different person, and so there's there's all sorts of stuff that could have gone on with the story changing through development.
It
So
might also be some intentional misdirection by From Software also, which you can never rule out, especially with
that's true.
Miyazaki as a director.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, I mean, in the intro of the game, like it shows that this is a it reveals the sort of America Radigan thing in that
Mhm.
opening cinematic. So it's right there in a way that, you might not notice. You probably wouldn't notice. But he does like to tease things. And I've always found it interesting that there's the line, America's Offspring, and it shows a picture of Ronnie, and it's like, oh, okay, well,
Mhm.
so you, yeah, exactly right. Like Miyazaki does like to. I mean, this is his style of storytelling. He likes to mess around with obscure mysteries.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So what specifically about the ruins made you think that there's something to do with the spirit world? Is there?
Ooh, well, you're gonna just gonna unveil to the audience how unhinged I am already, but
Sure, yeah. I don't want to like cover too much of the stuff that you might be covering in your video. So we can leave some details out of it, but I was
I,
just
I,
curious
I
about that.
I really don't mind sharing what's in the video, anyways. But so here's the thing: the ruins themselves are not like anything we actually have in game. I did try to compare them with a bunch of stuff, but they don't actually match one to one with anything we have.
Hmm.
However, next to the ruins, we have these coffins, right? And these coffins are specifically the variety of coffins that you find in the underground, which in and of itself is kind of a hint. Because you have these coffins, these stone coffins above ground, but they have these like reliefs on them, like these small effigy statues on their side, while the ones underground are completely flat, like the ones you get transported in the waterfalls,
Uh
etc.
huh. Yeah.
And you can find them all around the aqua, like the rivers underground. There's just a bunch of them, and they are exclusive to the underground. And then there is the architecture, which seemed somewhat familiar but doesn't match anything. When actually looking around, and if we look at the um, picture of those ruins on the teaser image, they have like this triangular like top, if you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have this hole, and it's that combination that was kind of like familiar. And indeed, by looking around, I realized that it kind of matches with a style that you can find in the Eternal Cities. So in the
Interesting.
Eternal, yeah, in the Eternal City buildings, they have some of those buildings which also have like two pillars to the side with a small pointy steeple on each end. It's a triangular top, and then they have like this circular like emblem carving thing that you can find on their buildings, and then the arch under. So the architecture is not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar shaped in that way. And then on these arcs in the concept art, they also is those carvings. If you really zoom in, you can see those carvings of a row of humanoid figures.
Mm-hmm.
And if you actually look carefully at them, it looks very similar to the last. Okay, we're getting into the real the real details here. It's the last row of the obelisk that has the history of the ancient dynasty.
Ah. Okay. So
So so it
these are the stone monuments in the underground that are sort of
yeah.
depicting a kind of history of some kind down there.
Yeah, so they have like this history that depicts some like a succession of events that are up to interpretation. And then in the last row, you have this depiction of a bunch of what looks almost noble, regal, royal figures. And that same depiction looks like it's on these structures, and we can see on the DLC teaser image, while also having a general style that's somewhat evocative of the architecture of the Eternal Cities. So now
Yeah,
this is only
that's
step one.
okay. What's uh what's step 5?
All right. So step five is that by okay. So now you have this link to this architecture with the eternal cities in the ancient dynasty. And what I believe, and this is we're going to be jumping a lot of things here, but I'm just going to give you the gist of it, is that the eternal cities are kind of like descending, or rather a continuation of the ancient dynasty. They are their successors in a way.
Mhm.
And that group, that lineage in itself, is actually made up, at least originally, of Newman.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
right.
I actually in
And
my most recent video I sort of speculated that that's probably so the Newman are said to be descendants of denizens of another world,
mhm.
and the Japanese word for another world is ikai, which could also be translated as underworld. And so
Yeah,
that
you got it. Mhm.
that to me suggests, yeah, the eternal, and I mean along with other things that suggest that the Newman are the Black Knife Assassins are scions of the Eternal City and things like that. So that all makes sense to me. I'm wondering. So let me put something out there. Um, One of the things I've been thinking about for a while is this connection between death and water. So you have
Yeah.
like the Tibia Mariners, right? Like they're on these boats, and there's this kind of ghostly water that they're traveling on.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's Godwin, who takes on this fishtail. And I think everywhere the death root comes up, there's like pools of water. Um,
Yeah.
and there's the spirit jellyfish. So there's all these odd allusions to water. And then you have this thing where you kind of have the upper world, which is all lit by the Erdtree, and then you have the underworld, which has its own sky, and it's below sea level. And there's this weird sort
Mm.
of reflection going on where like a lot of the Eternal City architecture is is almost upside down. Like not exactly, but because you can still you walk on it right side up, but there's this weird, visual thing of like it kind of looks upside down. And so I was thinking that there's some metaphysical significance to that, like this barrier of water, and you travel down wells to get there, and then you have the coffins which are being carried along rivers, and they like th- those rivers go down. There's all these waterfalls down there which go down into kind of misty nothingness. You don't really see what's where they lead. So
Yeah.
my thought is, well, maybe they lead to the spirit world. Maybe that's like the underworld is the way that you travel to the spirit world is through this water in some shape or form. And in order to get to the lands between, you have to traverse water. So I don't know. Does any of that make any sense?
I'm just gonna say it straight up. I have no answer to give you on that topic, but I it's true that like this link between like this connection between water and death that is very present in Elden Ring, and you just listed like basically everything there is to it there. It's there, it exists, it's very consistent also, but I just like ever since the game released, I just could not make anything out of it. And
Yeah,
one of
same.
the themes I was contemplating, like for if I were to make like a part two of the DLC, like DLC prediction video, which is basically me just listing a bunch of ideas until maybe I hit one of them, uh, was if we could explore this thematic duality between water and death, and if like the DLC could touch on the sea, for example, of like the Sea of Fog of Elden Ring. There might be some underwater environments, inspired things, and maybe elaborate on this connection between water and death. You have Godwin, who's literally a fish. The whatever they are called, I forget their names, which inflict death blight on you, which come out of Godwin, are also very fish-like. They have fins, etc. So
Oh,
yeah,
the basilisks. Yeah.
the basilisks. Thank you. So yeah, there's this obvious connection and parallel between the two, but there's just I just can't make anything
Yeah,
out of it.
yeah. It's just sort of vague symbols, and yeah, it's difficult to make any sense of.
There's also Godfrey's axe, which has some sort of tentacles on it, and
Godfrey's axe.
Mhm.
Uh, oh, I don't remember that actually. Okay, I'll have to look up that one.
Yeah, it does seem like it has tentacles on it, like like intertwined with like the suction cups on them.
I'm not recalling that. Okay, I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to see. Yeah.
So what do you make of the well actually what do you make of the title, The Shadow of the Erdtree? Because I mean that to
Ooh.
me suggests some kind of like alternate place. The Shadow of the Erdtree. Well, it's not the Erdtree, it's the Erdtree shadow. So and there's a kind of duality which ties into a lot of the themes of duality in the base game. I don't know. What do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have been thinking about the title. It's certainly one of the most telling things about the DLC, but it could mean so many things. Just the
Right.
term Shadow of the Earth Tree, it could be shadow as in something that follows the Earth Tree very closely. It could be shadow as in a mirror to it in a way,
Mm.
like a dark Earth Tree. It could be shadow as in the darkness it casts itself, like the hidden darkness of the existence of the Urchu, which is something that is normally seen as warm and bountiful, you know.
Right.
So yeah, there's quite a few ways you could actually take that title, which I found really interesting.
Well, what do you make of the depiction of the tree itself in the art that we got?
Oh yeah, that's a shadow Earth tree.
I mean that.
Yeah, but
Well, guess
I
because
am yeah
one
I
one of the
I
things that I thought looking at it is it looks like a black Erd tree with like this gold inside, and that's kind of the opposite of what we see in the game. We see like the golden part on the outside, and then when you go inside, it's like a more normal tree-like thing on the inside. So I was maybe thinking, well, maybe this is the flipped version. This is the mirror version or something.
yeah, that's honestly, if I had to like make a choice on this matter, I would say that's probably what it is. It's a dark reflection of the Earth tree, which, continuing on the thought of this being like spirit world related, uh, which is just a reflection of the Earth tree that we have in the real world. Its reflection in the spirit world is the Earth tree we see in the concept art. Um, I do think that we have to, I guess, at least call out and distinguish between like the Earth tree itself that we see in the concept art and the other tree that's coiled around it.
Right. Right.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
I don't know
So
what you think about that, but I think pretty unanimously, well, for the most part, it seems that people think it's Deathroot, right?
yeah, I think it resembles several things. It resembles. I mean, my first thought is, well, it looks like it's strangling it. It looks like the artist made an effort to make it look like it was really like grabbing the Erd tree, or the,
Mm-hmm.
the dark Erd tree that we see. Um, Definitely has some Deathroot connotations. There's like these particles that come around it, which is kind of similar to what Deathroot has. And then also, it looks a little bit like the Halig tree, in my view, the actual the branches that are coming out. So I don't. Maybe it's just well, trees look similar. So who knows if I'm reading too much into that? But that
I
was
think I can definitely see that connection, and I wonder if it's not because that tree and the Halic tree both look like decrepit, basically.
mm,
Um, if that's why they look similar. If you, yeah, it definitely looks like it from like a geometrical uh, point of view, but yeah, I don't know how that would fit in with the image of it coiling around, like choking the earth tree. Then again, if this is like a dream world. This could be just a surreal representation of something going on, basically.
Right, right. Uh, I wanted to pick up again on the idea that Mikola might be Torrent's former master.
Yeah,
Do you feel like that there's anything? I honestly haven't thought about this too carefully because I was sort of going under the presumption that Torrent's former master was the Snowy Crone,
same.
be, because yeah, it just made sense. Like he's shaggy and the fact that he likes the frozen Roa fruit, that's the one that heals him the most. I was thinking, okay, it must be like snow related, um, and then that would kind of
Mhm.
tie in with why Ronnie has this. And but if Mikola was Torrent's former master, and I mean to be totally clear, like we don't even know if that's Torrent really, because
That's true.
it could be
Could
some
be
other.
Borant.
So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It could be some other thing. So, but I mean, if he was Torrent's former master, are there any like implications to that makes you think of?
I would say, well, first of all, I definitely was also of the opinion that it's probably the Snowy Crown, simply because the whole package is just way too attractive. If you give this all of that to her,
Right.
the four arms, the spirit horse, the spirit calling bell, she just like the whole package.
Yeah.
Rani's
Yeah.
former master was a revenant sort of thing going on there. It was just way too good, right? But it's true that it wasn't like out of the realm of possibilities for it to be Mikola to begin with, and I guess it's one of the reasons why it's so easy to kind of lean into or like kind of see it as some people just see it as confirmed, basically, because Torrent's ring was always speculated to be made out of unalloyed gold just because of the tint
Right.
of the
Right.
gold ring itself. And then you had the spirit calling bell and the ashes. The bell itself has the caduceus motif on it, which is associated heavily with Mikola. It's not a Mikola exclusive thing by any means, but that's what most people associate it with.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, just Mikola had this whole thing. Like, okay, I'm gonna go a bit on a tangent here, but colors in Elden Ring are very important.
Yeah.
Okay, colors are very important. They are very significant. And then you had this whole thing with Mikola and sleep, and how sleep is always in every almost mythology very close to death in a way. And you
Right.
had this whole Mikola Saint Trina going on with that pale, almost purple tint going on. And it was also kind of similar to what the spirits and spirit calling bells were colored as. So there was some connections there. If Mikola is indeed Torrent's former master, I think beyond just strengthening Mikola's ties to spirits, I think the biggest um, thing for me would be that it means that Mikola was in on the thing, on the whole thing. So there is this idea that there is this master plan going on for America.
Right.
And a few characters are involved in that master plan. Amongst them is Rani and Melina. But if Torrent's former master was actually Mikola, and how Torrent is the link between Melina, Rani, and Mikola, and as it was something that was entrusted to the Tarnished and to Melina in her quest to find the Tarnished, it just seems to me that Mikola would have been in on the whole plan, which kind of like recontextualizes quite a few things, especially when it comes to America to me.
Yeah. I mean, this is this sort of gets to the biggest open ended question about Elden Ring, which is like, what the heck is going on in the entire story? um,
Yeah.
like it seems to me like Marika changed her mind at some point, and about what I don't know exactly, but that she developed this plan, and this plan is sort of playing out, and it involves bringing the Tarnished back and having them become Elden Lord and killing well, killing Radigan, killing the Elden Beast. That this is all sort of part of it, bringing death back into the world. So yeah, that's an interesting idea that um, if Mikola was involved, I wonder what that would imply about Moog and his whole plan. Although I guess that's just speculation. Oh, one thing I wanted to add to the whole Mikola being Torrent's former master is that when Ronnie first appears as Rena to give you the spirit calling bell and the three wolves, that there's like this fog, and it makes Kale go to sleep.
Oh
So
yeah, you're right.
that might be connected with Saint Trina as well.
Yeah, there's definitely something to add there. And yeah,
Um,
it's a whole it 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 as it is with every time I'm trying to talk about Elden Ring lore with people. It's so difficult to stay focused on a specific topic because
yes,
everything
yes,
is intertwined to such an extreme degree, and the lore itself is so vast. Like, just for example, if you asked me earlier, why do you think that the buildings are linked to the spirit world in any sort of way? And I have to go on this uh,
yeah,
insane tangent about
yeah.
go
No,
through like
I know
five
exactly what you mean.
standalone
Yeah,
theories, you know.
yeah. No, it's impossible to stay on one thing because you can literally you could start anywhere and get cover the entire story. You know, just everything's connected in that way.
Mhm.
Actually, on that on that subject, kind of a tangent, but it's just something I've been thinking about. Do you mentioned like how colors are important? Do you
Yeah.
think that, or do you have any thoughts about? Is there any connection between gravity and well, okay, gravity is purple. Gravity magic is purple. Saint
Mhm.
Trina's fire is purple.
Yeah.
Uh, is there anything going on there? Is there something to do with gravity?
I will say no. I will say I don't know. Here's the thing. There is even more purple stuff going on, which is even more obnoxious. So Saint Trina's fire is like a very light purple.
Right.
Then you can
Yeah,
have
it's not the
some,
same color. Yeah.
yeah, and then you can have a darker purple fire, which would be some sort of Halfen Glowmite Queen fire going on. It's not in game right now. It doesn't exist in game, but it did exist in the 1.0 version of the game. I don't know if you are aware.
Oh, I didn't.
Um,
Literally like the visuals for it.
it's yeah, it's Maliket's. Maliket's black flames were actually purple in some of his attacks, specifically the attacks where now it glows golden when you so that you can parry them with the
Aha.
blasphemous glow. In the 1.0 version of the game, they were glowing in a purple fire, which is not an arbitrary decision because the existence of purple fire can be speculated with what we have with the lore today, which
Well,
would be associated. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, actually, because the grave violet says that
Hmm.
this is the color of ghost flame, and then it's like, well, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's this blue thing, but then if the rune of death was sealed, then
Hmm.
and that's got red flames. So okay, red plus blue equals purple. So that actually makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna have to look that up. I did not know that at all. That's really fascinating. But you don't think that there's any? I mean, it just.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
The
sorry.
gravity.
I interrupted you. Go continue with the thought. Yeah.
I completely went off. I don't think there is necessarily a connection between gravity and that. I almost want to say that space stuff as a whole is its own thing almost.
Hmm.
Um, you have the I don't know. I just it's a different. Sure, you can like the easy way out is just to say, well, it's a different shade of purple, and there you
Right.
go. And yeah, but thematically there might be more going on there, especially because with Estelle, gravity is associated quite explicitly with darkness itself, rather than just being gravity, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, the
So
void.
honestly,
Yeah.
yeah. And also it's, I guess, all right, mini tangents. There is some quite a few varied ways with which people approach the lore of the game. Some people are very much into the outside the thematics of things, the symbolism of things. Some people are very much into the inspirations and like real world mythological implications and how they parallel what's going on in the game to find answers. And honestly, I feel like if you were to look more that way, there might be something there, but it's definitely one of the areas that I am not. It's not my expertise in a way. So
Yeah, I mean I honestly I don't have any like thoughts about it exactly. It's just like it just seems like with the importance of colors, there is this
mhm.
sort of dichotomy between red stuff and blue stuff, right? You've
Yeah.
got like the red crucible, all of that stuff, the fire giants, flame, and then you've got the blue magic, sorcery, and you have this symbolism of like of Radigan and Renala marrying, and then red
Mhm.
plus blue equals purple. So it's just feels like there's something going on there, but this is the trouble that I have with when you take these that sort of approach, as you were saying, like the symbolic approach, is like, well, how much of this is just how much of this is just symbolism, and it's not really telling you anything important about the plot, and also how much
Yeah.
of it is maybe just things is just misdirection, or like the things that happen to be very similar. It's I don't know. It's hard to make any sense out of it.
Yeah, there's definitely lot of gaps where you have to make a leap of faith. And honestly, most of the time, it's not about what your logical step itself is or what it's based on, because it can be very flimsy, but rather like the cohesiveness of the big picture that you are painting with it. If uh, like the general idea that you are constructing is interesting and it is cohesive, it can justify a lot of the I want to say uh, interpretations that could be questionable that you could make about different things, which is why there's always room for all these different like styles of interpretation in the lore.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, you're looking for the big picture to make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about specifically with the DLC, or any other? I mean, we I'm sure we could talk for hours about the general lore of Elden Ring, but I kind of wanted to focus a bit more exclusively on the DLC for this.
About the DLC, one thing that's kind of interesting to me is the of the ghosts, the ghostly graves that we can see. There is one of them that you actually cannot find in game. You know, like it's the one that looks like it's probably made of wood and is a I don't know how to describe it, but it's inverted semicircle with a
Right.
stick in the middle. You know which one I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It
that
it
one.
looks
That
it
one you
looks
can't
like
actually find in game.
it looks like the sword of a vowel from Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, exactly that. And I am wondering if that is not supposed to perhaps symbolize the rune of death, maybe? I
Yeah,
don't know if you
I
have
I
any
came to the
thoughts on that.
same idea. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's sort of the rune of death that we actually see. Well, one of the things I thought about, it didn't occur to me immediately with the game, but when you look at the rune of death in that cutscene after beating Malekith, like there's this red rune, and then it's got this black sort of root like stuff, like death root kind of stuff covering it. And then once the rune is unsealed, it all bursts into flame.
Yeah.
So my thought was like, well, maybe the black stuff is not really part of the rune of death, that it's really just that red thing, and that it's only because it's sealed that you have this death root stuff, and if you were to unseal it, then it would just be this semicircle. But it definitely,
That's
the
yeah.
stake sort of gravestone thing that we see in the picture, it's much more of a semicircle, so I don't know if it's similar enough to say like, oh, that is what it's symbolizing, but it would tie in
It
with all the
does.
spirit world stuff. And
Yeah, it does. It does look like it would fit in better in an Elden Ring than the actual Rune of Death.
right, right.
Yeah.
What do you make of, because like the rune of death, it's got the semicircle facing downwards, and then Marika's like the rune arc thing that she's crucified on, and all
Yeah.
the statues, the the martyr effigies, they're all facing upwards. What do you have any do you have any thoughts about that? Like what's going on there? What was the were those
Well,
sorry, yeah, go on.
uh, I honestly, that seems to be one of those symbolism things that people
Yeah. Yeah.
that people do. I'm not really good at that, but what I have to say is, I don't know if you saw what Sekiro Doobie posted today about the Health and Steeple.
Oh, no, I have not seen that.
Okay, so he posted some sort of cut description of the Health and Steeple in Chinese, um, which apparently exists in the Chinese version of the text. If you translate it, it makes mentions of it being a commemorative sword in honor of those slain by the curse of the rune of life. And then it
Whoa.
also mentions that it channels black flames and stuff like that. Then again, the translation is probably like really scuffy, but
That's
it it
very
it,
interesting though. That's very
it
interesting.
yeah, it does can the translation could be like really scuffy, but it rings some bells from what we know in the lore that it could potentially like uh be really close to what it actually means, and it could be really interesting. If Marika's Elden Ring definitely looks like a sort of opposite or reverse to the Rune of Death, right?
Mhm.
So I was considering that if maybe Marika's Elden Ring could be considered the Rune of Life in that context.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think someone had also mentioned that it. I think Sekiro Dupi himself like thought that it could maybe reference the Rune of Abundance of Mikela, which I actually think is not the case because abundance necessarily is not the opposite of death. You know, it's not
Right.
necessarily the synonym of life, and it also already has its pair, which would be the Rune of Decay from Millennia, right?
Right. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not even sure, because the thing is like the great runes that we get, seem to they don't seem to be the same sort of runes like the rune of death. Like the rune of death has this very special uh
Place.
yeah, it's like, oh, this was removed wholly from the ring, and it's got
Yeah.
this name destined death, and this changed everything. Whereas the great runes they're like pieces of the ring, but they don't seem to have this obvious power, this like singular concept behind them, like the rune of death does. Like Godric's rune, Moog's rune, Morgoth's rune. Uh, they're like representative of the carrier, and so they have some of that aspect to them. You know, Radahn's rune
Yeah.
is like fiery, and Melania's rune is rotting, but they don't. I don't get the sense that they're the same, that they're like in the same category as the rune of death, if that makes sense.
I can definitely see that. I think a lot of that was lost to cut content.
Right.
A lot of the runes had more uh, a more explicit theme or power associated with them, but I think they just like at some point like just went without it, just stuck to the one that made the most sense, which is the rune of death. Yeah.
Right, right.
You could still like deduce those aspects of them if you were to, uh, be a bit more interpretative, as you said. For example, like Redan's is fiery and is fierce, and like Millennia is rotten, which is decay, etc. But talking about the Mikala's rune in abundance is something I forgot to mention. If we go back to the DLC announcement, the actual field that we see in the DLC is completely covered in crop, in wheat.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, and I thought something I mentioned in my video I'm working on. It seems to be oddly fitting for Mikela and Mikela's rune of abundance. Right, it's like an extreme case of abundance in display there, and I thought it was also almost a hint as to the nature of what we were seeing, like the scenery itself. If the scenery itself conforms to a property and an aspect of like that figure, which if we assume it's Mikela, then it could almost be a hint as to the fact that what we are seeing is a dream world in itself, rather than being like reality.
So this just made me sort of think of something. Um, well, when you get to the end of the game, you get to this shallow lake where you fight the Elden Beast, and there are all
Mm-hmm.
these Erdtree things there. I mean, they're just like trunks,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah, the
also,
vision.
yeah, it seems like that's, I don't know. There's definitely a similarity there with the giant stone sort of petrified trees in the underground cities. I don't know what that means, but
Ooh, yeah,
but
it's a whole
um
thing.
but I mean, if you have multiple Erd trees, uh, you know, just throwing this idea out there, well, maybe every Erd tree has its own world, and maybe
Uh-huh.
the Halig tree was going. Maybe that world's like something that you can dream up, and you use a tree to dream it up. And maybe with the Halig tree, Mikola dreamed up a world, and maybe that's where we're going. Does that make any sense at all?
It kind of does, because the whole concept of becoming like a god and the vessel of Elden Ring is that it gives you this power to realize your vision for how the world should be, you know.
Right.
So it definitely like fits in that in that aspect for sure. But yeah, there's just so many ways like you could
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's
interpret
kind of
that.
it's. I feel kind of silly even for like we're spending all this time. We literally got a title and a picture, and that's it. We don't have anything to go on yet.
That's all we
But
need, baby.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, listen, man, this has been super fun talking with you about this, and I definitely want to talk to you again about some other things if you're
For sure.
interested, and maybe if we get more information in the coming days and weeks, whatever that
Hopefully.
means. But this has been super fun. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Well, it really was really fun, and as always, talking about Elden Ring lore is a massive mess. Uh, but it's a fun mess. It's great. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. And for everyone listening, please go check out Kosmos' channel, check out his videos. He's got fantastic content. Really recommend it. And that's it from us. So take care, everyone.